Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Ramna Khan. And yes, as you know, we give you sports information from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is @ Indus News Sports. That basically works both for Twitter and for Instagram. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. And yes, 5th seed Tsitsipas and the 6th seed Zverev progressed on Wednesday with straight sets wins in French Open. And yes, from the world of cricket, England versus New Zealand. Century from the debutant Devon Conway sets platform for New Zealand. And yes, from the world of NBA, Philadelphia 76ers roll past Washington Wizards 129-112 in Game 5 for berth in semifinals. And yes, from the world of rugby, Wasps back Paolo Odogwu is facing an extended spell on the sidelines after suffering a serious knee injury. And yes, those were the headlines. And yes, we'll be focusing more on the world of tennis. Yes, talking about tennis, we talk about French Open. And yes, a lot of updates in terms of the French Open right now, and obviously people are heading into the round 3. But anyways, to discuss more of the world of tennis, we have with us Pete Zebron, all the way from the US, who's a tennis expert. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thank you kindly. Wonderful to be here.
Great. So Pete, first things first, we'll start with the first match that we want to talk about. Zverev, beating Safiullin to begin with in the straight sets, and storming into the round 3, and he won 7-6, 6-3, 7-6. So what's your take on this particular match?
Well, a couple things. Safiullin came in as a qualifier, so credit to him for getting this far. They've known each other since they were youngsters, playing each other, since they were 14 years old. I give a lot of credit to him for taking Zverev to 2 tiebreakers. In fact, he broke Zverev in every set of the match. So he played exceptionally well. Zverev, however, won the last 7 points of the match to win, and he was able to get through. But one thing I noticed about Zverev, again, compared to maybe other players, he's going very big on his first serve, about 136 miles an hour, which is very fast. And then his second serve is basically what the rest of the tour's first serve is right now on clay, 125, 126. So Sasha Zverev going very big on his serve.
Right, and it's definitely interesting to see, like you said, the Safiullin, obviously they've been playing together for a while, and as you discussed that, him coming this far shows that things are pretty much improving in terms of, because during these hard times of all the players learning, giving themselves time, I think we have seen many different new people who've been trying, who've been struggling, have actually made it to a bigger prospect. So I think, as you said, that he's reached this far. Maybe in the next French Open or any other big event, he'd probably go farther.
And little history on him as well. He won 5 consecutive futures matches early in his career. In fact, the second of those 5, he beat Tsitsipas in the quarterfinals. So he won 5 titles in a row back in 2017. So obviously he's got the goods, and we'll take Zverev's word for it that we'll probably see more of him.
Yes, and if he managed to do that back in 2017, obviously Tsitsipas is a big name too. He's also on the verge of getting there. But a few hiccups. I remember a few hiccups that actually happened when it comes to Tsitsipas back in one of the major events in terms of tennis. But in general, I think all the athletes, all the players are actually trying to struggle and try to make their mark as much as they can.
I agree. Tsitsipas is looking very good coming into this tournament. Obviously, he had good success on clay. His 4 losses at the French previously have been to Djokovic, Thiem, Wawrinka, and Karlovic. So, he's lost to the very best at his his past tournaments at Roland Garros.
Right. So currently, do you see Tsitsipas more as a threat in terms of his presence right now? Because I think in terms of how we're seeing him get there, I'm sure it would be more interesting to see when he enters. Maybe after the 3rd round, or maybe he gets way more further than this.
My pre-tournament pick was Tsitsipas against Nadal in the final.
Right.
Tsitsipas really should have beaten Nadal in the Barcelona final.
Right.
Nadal outfoxed him there, really stole that match.
Right.
Tsitsipas is playing exceptionally well, and I think a lot of people picked him to even beat Nadal in Barcelona.
Right.
Best of five, however, that's another story. Obviously, Nadal knows exactly what he's doing, but Tsitsipas will have his chances, and I firmly expect him to reach the final.
And I remember Tsitsipas in the semi-final, the one that you're talking about, the way he cruised into the final, his efforts, it literally seemed effortless, and everybody were vouching for the fact that, Tsitsipas is now right on fire and he'll surely, beat Nadal back then.
Absolutely. He's beaten just about everybody, so he's got that confidence. The only thing is sort of like Dominic Thiem, doing it in a Masters 1000 or a best of three is one thing. Actually getting it done in a best of five, 7 times, that's a big ask. He'll be right there. And maybe if a bounce or two goes his way, or if he gets some momentum and, his opponents hit some bad patches, he can capitalize. But he literally is right there at this time.
We're surely looking forward and talking about Tsitsipas. Obviously, he cruises past Martinez to reach the round 3. What's your take on that straight match, 6-3, 6-4, and 6-3?
The biggest thing I take away is Tsitsipas, 26 of 27 points won at net. Coming to net, good things happen when you come to net. Only losing 1 point out of 27 chances at net. That's my biggest takeaway. Straight set win for him. That's good. That's convenient. Right. He's got John Isner coming up, and you never know what happens against a big server. Like I said, he has lost to Karlovic, his very first Roland Garros. He came through as a qualifier that year. Drew Karlovic in the first round, lost to him. That'll happen when you play big servers. But John Isner is going to be a threat for him, but I do expect him to get through that match.
Well, we're surely looking forward to that. Talking about how things are heading in for Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer, of course. Because, if I'm not wrong, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer's men Grand Slam single titles are at a record in the French Open. I think they've tied, if I'm not wrong.
20 majors apiece. Obviously, at Roland Garros, Nadal has a commanding edge there, 13-1, but they are 20 all.
Right.
And this was sort of the chase for Federer was really something more in the news the last few years. Maybe not so much now. It is 2020, and should Nadal get the win here, which a lot of people are expecting, he will be at 21 at the top of the board for all-time Grand Slams. I'm really surprised that's really not talked about so much anymore. It could very well be that I think everybody thinks at the end of the day, at the end of everybody's career, it will be Djokovic who has the most.
Right, so we should also keep an eyes open for Djokovic. And obviously, besides Djokovic, in terms of, the fifth seed, Tsitsipas would surely be the threat too. But it all depends when the semi-final comes up and who faces maybe Djokovic in the semi-final if he gets there.
Very good, very good. Yeah, absolutely right. And, his quarterfinal, that would be a difficult quarterfinal. Either Berrettini, the talented Italian, I believe he's up 2 sets right now in his match, or Federer. And Roger Federer looked exceptionally good in his first match. Only his second match back, he did lose to Andahar in a tune-up in Geneva when he did have a break in the third set. But best of 5 is different. Federer took care of business, but again, early on, and he's self-admitted that he's using Roland Garros really as match play, tune-up matches for Wimbledon preparation.
Right, but it surely is going to be interesting when things get there because, this time, for the first time, obviously, they're on the same draw. If we talk about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, they are on the same draw. And it's surely going to be interesting because on the other draw, we see Medvedev, Tsitsipas, and Zverev. So it all depends how things pile up because I think the bigger names and the bigger powerhouses is one side and the other powerhouses are on the other side.
Right. And tennis, really any other sport, that when they seed, the number 1 seed, if they reach that far, will play the number 4 seed in the semifinals in 2 versus 3. Tennis changed this formula years ago, and it's sort of random now. But, it always seems like of the big 3, it's Djokovic that always has either Federer or Nadal in his half and not the other guy. But this time, all 3 of them are there, although Federer probably not so much of a threat as he admitted. just because he's rusty, he's been on the shelf. But how ironic that they're all three on the same half. And again, that opens up a big opportunity on the bottom half of the draw for a Tsitsipas, for a Zverev, perhaps.
Right. Looking forward for an interesting situation that is going to be in the French Open. I would also want to talk about, a big news that actually came out. Let's talk about Naomi Osaka. Her situation recently, she did not want to attend this press conference after, this match. And there was a big, raise of voices on that. Obviously, she was fined $15,000. And it was, indirectly told to her that, you will be taken out. And she herself the next day withdraws from the French Open. So how do you see this situation growing in the long run for her?
Well, I've been to 3 press conferences of hers in Cincinnati. I cover the Western and Southern Open every year. So this was 2019. Obviously, last year, the Western and Southern Open was in New York. And her press conferences tended to be much longer than others. Obviously, this is her first time in Cincinnati in 2019. But a lot of, we've got the questions in English. And then, interestingly enough, the questions in Japanese at the end, where she takes the question in Japanese but will answer in English. Right. But what I recall, and again, she's very soft-spoken in press, came into press one time in Cincinnati and asked everybody if we wanted to hear a joke and then told the joke. So she's got that side of her, right, but very soft-spoken. Obviously, clay is not her best surface, and, right, very introspective person. I just hope that she's able to figure things out. It's a tough patch for her. Right. The fine, she announced what she was going to be doing, namely not talking to press. Obviously, it is a fine can be given, and not only did Roland Garros implement that, but the other 4 majors came into play and said, we're going to do the same thing. You've got the obligation. A lot of players speaking up. Ash Barty saying, this is what we signed up for. It's part of the deal. Right. Other people may be neutral, but having been on the side of, hundreds of press conferences on the press side of it, right, some of those are pretty difficult. It's not the easy thing to come into press after a loss. And right, I think she felt that maybe I'll have 1, maybe 2 more wins here, and then I'm going to have that presser with the questions again coming up saying, why can't you do this on clay? That said, gentlemen, Pete Sampras always got these questions for over a decade at Roland Garros. Maria Sharapova, clay was her worst surface. She right, was asked these questions again and again, and go figure, out of her 5 majors, 2 were at the French. She figured it out. So Osaka is that good of a player that I think with time, she's tried a lot of different coaches. Right. She'll find the formula, but this is just not the right time for her. Probably a good decision to step away at this point.
Right. And besides that, the last question that I would put in would be, she also, in her tweet, she talks more about the mental health side, and WTA has mentioned that, we want to look into that and see what we can do or to be of help to you. Because, this is one of the major issues. She's like one of the biggest athletes. I think one of the, $55 million last year. She made that amount of money. She's like on top. I think in terms of female and categorized athletes, I think she's the richest. So I think, raising a voice over the mental health situation, maybe something else is different because these corona times have actually changed the way players think.
It's very true. On the flip side of that, Dominic Thiem, who used to play everything, took time away. He said he needed to figure things out. Obviously, he came back. He lost, first round in Roland Garros. The pandemic, the bubble, has changed everything. Tennis players are creatures of habit. Right. Being in a bubble, you can't do your routine. That's a huge intangible that's now factoring in, that's impacting players and how they prepare. But I think at the end of the day, maybe end of the year, some good will come out of this. Certainly, Naomi Osaka's statements, her actions, her declarations, her explanations will shed a light on mental health. Marty Fish, American tennis player, had self-admitted mental issues, mental problems that he was wrestling with. He's figured things out as well. Right. So I think this looks to be perhaps a bad patch for Osaka. Let's not forget the Olympics. Who knows if they're going to happen? They're coming up in 7 weeks in Japan of all places, and so I think that might even have a factor coming into it. Maybe she wanted to mentally prepare to put her best foot forward there, although that might not happen either.
Right. Pete, let's hope for the best for her and for the world of sports. Thank you so much for joining in and discussing the world of tennis with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
Great. So, that was, obviously we gave you an in-depth analysis in terms of the world of French Open. Anyways, we'll take a quick break, and once we get back from the break, there is more coming up your way from the world of sports. See you guys after the break. And welcome back from break. And yes, before the break, we were discussing the world of tennis. Yes, we were talking more about the French Open, but not only that, obviously we give you information from sports from all across the globe. So right now, we're going to talk more about the world of cricket, and we focused more on England versus New Zealand. And to discuss the in-depth analysis of what's happening right now, we have with us Adam Bell all the way from New Zealand. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
Great. So Adam, I'll start off. Obviously, New Zealand is batting at the current moment, and it's the first test. And so far, so good. We see Conway making the debutant. He's still, going solid. But in terms of the entire perspective of, in terms of the team itself, I think New Zealand is right now on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. New Zealand, won the toss early on day one, and it was obviously a bold call to win the toss and bat first. It's something that New Zealand normally don't do unless the pitch is flat to bat on. And I thought that the partnership between Tom Latham and Devon Conway, obviously making his debut, did a really great job of seeing off Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad with the new ball. And look, Devon Conway's on fire at the moment, isn't he?
Right.
He's passed 150 not out and is looking great. And in his first Test match, and overall at the moment, New Zealand's got themselves into a really good position early on day two, where if they can just extend that lead a little bit more, then they can put some pressure on the England batting lineup that is missing a few key players in this Test match.
Right, but when we look at the starting or the beginning of obviously the Test, initially a few wickets went off very quickly. Even if you talk about Kane Williamson, but the point is, I think right now New Zealand is absolutely spot on in the direction to get this first Test done their way.
Yeah, there's still a long way to go in this Test match, and as I mentioned, this England side is a little bit under strength. Guys like Ben Stokes and Ben Folkes and a few others aren't available in this Test match. But so far, the New Zealand side is batting well. And as I mentioned, Devon Conway. I mean, what a performance from Devon Conway in his debut Test match. He's now got the highest score by debutant at Lords in a Test match, and again showing his form that he displayed in first-class cricket in New Zealand. And he's just taken to international cricket like a duck to water, isn't he? What a great start. There's always, I guess, question marks about players when they perform or have to perform overseas for the first time.
Right.
Him and Kyle Jamieson would be the two guys that I guess a lot of people would be looking out for. And so far, Devon Conway has answered the call. 100 on debut. Doesn't really get much better than that.
Right, and if we look into New Zealand, I remember we did have this discussion earlier as well. When it comes to New Zealand, there were a lot of teams coming into New Zealand, but this is the first time that New Zealand is going out to play cricket at some other location, and I think this has given a very solid start in terms of not only the Test. I'm sure if you look at the further matches that are lined up, I'm sure they will definitely make their mark well.
Oh, absolutely. This English side still has some really quality players in the side. And I thought yesterday, Devon Conway played Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad superbly. And also you saw off a really hostile spell from Mark Wood, who was getting up to, 93 miles an hour and was troubling him with the short delivery. But he was able to see that off and adapt his game and prosper later on in the innings. And along with Henry Nicholls as well, they put on a great partnership late on day one to get New Zealand into a really solid position. But yeah, absolutely. I think this Test match and the way New Zealand started with the bat is really promising, especially with the World Test Championship a few weeks away.
Right, but I'm sure they would have gone through the same situation of the biosecure bubble, because a lot of teams actually had issues in terms of that. But I think this is being the first time New Zealand touring after this coronavirus pandemic all across the globe. I think they're still right, and they're on the ground. They know what they're doing. Even if we talk about England, their team is definitely out there and it's their home ground. So they would have expected more of the home ground edge for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, obviously, touring teams recently have struggled a bit. But I would have thought that, Broad and Anderson would have been a little bit more effective on day one. Look, they bowled superbly without a little bit of luck. On another day, they might have got a few more wickets. I thought Ollie Robinson was really impressive on debut, getting, the prize wicket of Kane Williamson, right, and then getting Ross Taylor LBW. I thought he bowled superbly. I think the English bowling lineup was probably lacking a little bit of variation. They didn't go with a spin bowler, and I think on a drier track, they probably just needed someone to just offer something a bit different than just a lot of medium paces and that extra pace of Mark Woodman. So I think though New Zealand batted extremely well, and I can see that England's taken some more inroads this morning, I just think that lack of variation in their attack is probably something that they probably in hindsight wish they would have played an extra spinner or another spinner.
I think that's a good observation in terms of that. But I think if there were more fall of wickets on day one, and maybe those wickets that maybe Ollie Robinson is taking now, or maybe Mark Wood is making his mark, the point is if that was on the day one, things would have been slightly different for the New Zealanders. Yeah,
absolutely. And when Ollie Robinson got Ross Taylor LBW, there was probably a chance for England to really make some inroads, but it was Henry Nicholls who came in and really steadied the ship for the New Zealand side and ended up within 50 not out at the end of day one. So there were definitely some opportunities for England on day one. They just didn't quite capitalise them. But from a long way out, like watching from New Zealand, I thought the pitch seemed like it was a little bit on the slow side. I mean, the England bowlers were getting a little bit of swing, but they just didn't kind of create those opportunities to really get into the New Zealand middle order.
Right, and I think this would definitely be preparation for the England side as well in terms of playing with New Zealand team out there in England, because after this Pakistan is obviously going to join in and have their matches with the England team. So let's hope all goes well on that part as well. That's going to be the end of June.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be a fantastic series between England and Pakistan, and you think about England's going to get a few really good players back. Joss Butler will probably come back into the side now that Ben Foakes has been ruled out for the season. Ben Stokes, Jofra Archer may be injured. Is injured, that will come back into the mix as well. So it's going to be an exciting summer of cricket, especially now in England where fans are being allowed to attend the matches, where last year we remember all games were behind closed doors. So it's going to be an exciting summer of cricket in England, especially with the World Test Championship as well.
Right, and current capacity is 25%. It's just capped to that because of the coronavirus situation. But anyways, let's hope this match goes and comes to a better conclusion, and hopefully by the end of this series we'll surely get in touch with you again to discuss more of England versus New Zealand. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thanks very much, Alan Dunn.
So yes, that was pretty much in depth of the New Zealand versus England situation, and not to forget that Pakistan cricket team is currently in Abu Dhabi. There's still ups and downs and variations in terms of expediting the PSL, and let's hope things go well so our team can go to England and play their part well. But anyways, I'll just quickly jump over to the next news, which is from the world of NBA. Yes, we talk about 76ers. They actually won against the Washington Wizards 129-112 in Game 5, and Seth Curry scored a playoff career high of 30 points. It's interesting how things are slowly and gradually progressing in the playoffs, and Philadelphia 76ers are leading the series with 4-1. The Eastern Conference semifinal is set for Sunday on June 6th, and surely when that happens, we'll definitely give you guys an update on it. Lock your dates. Anyways, we'll quickly jump over to the world of rugby. Yes, talking about rugby, Wasp Udogwu is suffering from a serious knee injury, and he got injured during the Saturday game against the Saints. Udogwu played for Leicester and Sales before going to the Wasps. About his history, he is still to win an international cap, but scored 9 ties for Wasps. But anyways, let's hope this injury does not take him off the grid, because it's technically very hard for him to make a comeback. And talking about knee injuries in terms of rugby is a contact sport, a very solid contact sport. Anyways, we wish him quick recovery. Anyways, guys, this was pretty much it from the world of sports. If you want to reach out to us, you can on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Sports. Till then, take good care of yourselves. and bye-bye.